Yeah, I mean, most of the work, as you know, is the work doing B2. So I'm already mentioned that next week. Hopefully, we will have a presentation of I think it's going to be the Alpha 4, I think, and yeah, so you will be able to see it. I don't want to say done, but almost with the interface, what it looks like, and in a very advanced stage. So yeah, hopefully next week. I think a great thing that happened this week, in my opinion, is the discussion we had on the policies and parameters channel. About I'd say crowdsourcing all the parameter process work, and as you know, we have a model that we use to set parameters. This model was developed by William throughout all of the 5 years we have been working on this. But the model doesn't have we still need some empirical data about the effort jurors have to put into resolving the cases. And I was following quite closely the conversation we had in the channel, and I was super happy to see that, it's kind of, democracy at work, improving, the results of the parameter setting process. And as you know, we actively encourage all of you to get involved in this, because the model is great and we put, a lot of effort into improving it every day, but it's you, the jurors, who know better how much effort you put. So this input is super important for having better parameters, and have parameters that produce the right incentives for jurors under the constraints that the model is to have in order for not being attacked and that. So know if William has some thoughts about this.
Yeah, I'd echo that. The model is useful for sort of what the parameters need to be with respect to each other in order to not create attack opportunities. But ultimately, how hard a task is not something that a mathematical model can know. And while some of the sort of questions around the subjectivity of the task can be estimated by sort of historical data on the rates of coherence or the rates of a given option winning, the actual effort that the task takes is not something we have a good data proxy for. I hope jurors give more input into the parameter setting process for the courts they're active in. My sort of long-term, my midterm vision for this is instead of making these kind of omnibus parameter updates that I've been proposing for the last several years, where I'm okay, time to update everything, and I list parameters for all the courts. It'd be nice if people, maybe use the calculator that I've had, do some of these models. But then, they propose things for the courts they're active in based on the effort that they have. And, the jurors in these different courts give, sort of a more collaborative process of determining how much effort they're making and then what the parameters should correspondingly be in their court, subject to the attack resistance constraints. So I'm writing a blog article about parametrization now that hopefully people will find useful in these future reflections. That I'm trying to detail all the different things I think about when I have been proposing parameters. So hopefully that'll be useful.
Maybe you can explain, William, when we open a new court, how do you estimate the parameters when we have we don't know how much effort this takes?
Yeah, that's really hard. And so when you have a new court, you should be flexible and adjusting if people realize that you misestimated the effort at the beginning. But not only do you not know the effort, but you don't know these sort of you have none of this historical data that has gives these proxies on rates of coherence and subjectivity. So you just have to guess those things. Typically when someone has some use case and they're okay, we need a new court for this because none of the current courts quite fit. My question to them, okay, how hard do you think the task is? Do you think it's very subjective? Do you think it's less subjective? It's if I paid someone $30 for this, do you think that they would be that would be an appropriate compensation, $15, $50. And, you just have to sort of intuitively guess how, sort of the nature of the task. But obviously, these sort of like intuitive guesses will be like even less accurate.
Yeah. So yeah, if you can get involved, guys. Well, I mean, I should like actually congratulate you for getting involved in helping us make this better. So yeah, thank you. So yeah, and soon we will have the presentation, the post by William explaining how this is calculated. So of course, if you are inclined to actually help in making the model better, that also would be super helpful. But where there's more improvement opportunities is basically in how much effort jurors need to exert. So we have that. Anything else worth mentioning about research, William?
Not really. So that's taken up a lot of my time over the past week. The sort of like normal, sort of interesting research questions around soulbound tokens and social choice theory are still things that I always sort of keep thinking about. But this week has been a lot of parameters.
Yeah, good. So other things going on. Well, for me, I'm this week a bunch of administrative stuff. Super hard to run a company without reliable access to credit cards because of crypto. But I don't want to bore you with how hard it is to pay things like AWS if you have like very small limit credit cards. But that's fine. It's not really worth mentioning here. Then we we have this week we had the update of the fellowship. I think we had we do like once a month update of the fellows who are participating in the program, and this is the first time that we take a much more hands-on approach to the fellowship. It used to be like very people just applied and then got accepted, and then maybe they presented a paper some months on the line. And now we are like doing more, to help them in this process, and because we have more manpower. Before it was like basically just me doing most of the things of the fellowship. Now, maybe Abeer, who's here, you can mention something about how the process is working.
Yeah, it's going quite well. Several fellows are working on some really interesting things. They're at various stages of the process. We will probably have a sort of fellowship conference in a couple months where, some of our fellows can showcase some of the things they've been doing, some very interesting stuff in range of cases, all the way from tokenization to certain jury experiments to real estate stuff, construction industry. So yeah, it's going on. Certain fellows, we sort of help them out if they have some issues. We've got some people working on some AI tools that we could hopefully integrate into the Kleros court. So keep an eye out for that as well. But it's going pretty well. We'll probably have more updates for you soon. One of our fellows, Inez, will be giving a talk on asset tokenization. I believe that has already been shared on the group. Maybe Jean can share it again. I would recommend you all look into that. Paul is here. Paul, do you want to share how your project is going so far?
I would probably simply add, in terms of how my project is going, I will post my most recent PowerPoint online just to give you a sense as to what's going on. I've moved to a mixed method approach to essentially get at a possible cognitive bias that the jurors may fall into. So some of this is coming from the experimental philosophy and
But it's cutting a bit. But we can assume that everything is fine with your project, Paul. I mean, and looking forward to your presentation on the. I will call it, fellowship demo day. Yeah, and yeah. So we have the fellowship. Then, well, as you know, the incubator is going on in Lisbon in the block. As you know, we have 3 projects. We have TalentLayer, we have TheBadge, and we have Lenstags. We have been exploring this week actually some opportunities for collaboration with Lens protocol. As you know, content moderation has been something we have been looking at for some time now. Actually, for some time, if you read the original Kleros white paper, I mean, there was a section of how Kleros could be used to solve content moderation problems in social media platforms. So this is not something we have just discovered recently. It's something we had in mind since the really early days. But some ideas need time to to mature, and so this idea of decentralized content moderation is, I mean, the time for this idea is just coming now. So, and this is something we have been discussing with people from Lens. As you know, Lens has this the protocol, and on top of that protocol, there is a bunch of front ends that can be built, and we think, or more, I think that Kleros could be a great tool for moderating for offering to different front-end providers in order to moderate the content in each front end, and each provider can choose the rules that they prefer for for the community of those front ends can choose the rules they want Kleros to enforce. So this is something we are quite intensively researching from the business development perspective. So we have that. Let me see if we have. So that's from the point of view of Lens. Somebody mentioned, Abeer mentioned, Ines is participating in this conference organized by the Architect community. This is a community of arbitrators, which was founded by Sophie Nappert, who is a very well-known arbitrator, and she's of course a friend of Kleros. And all of these real-world assets, category is becoming coming in a big way now, and we have also been exploring this for a while now. As you know, we did a research project with MakerDAO 2 years in the past on how to use Kleros for curating the list of assets that should be or could be acceptable as collaterals for the DAI. So this is something that it was a bit early back then, but now it's becoming a big thing, and everyone is now looking at real world assets, and we are in a good position to to take one part of this market. So that's another business development goal we have in the near term future. Then another, I think I mentioned this last week, but another thing we are working on internally is build a better onboarding process for members of the community, because we have so many different things now that people, can get into the community and they get a bit confused, because there is the incubator if you want to build a project, there is the fellowship if you want to research something. You can also maybe want to contribute code to Kleros, or maybe you just want to be a juror, or how many other activities that you could do basically. And so we are organizing, and we are trying to understand better what should be the flow or the user flow for new members of the community. And so lots of our research is also put there in the terms of community building. As you know, Jean has been approaching some of you in order to understand better, different user personas we have. As you know, Kleros has this quite, I'd say, interesting, feature of the community has different user personas that is not very common in other crypto projects. So of course we have all of this crypto Web3 part of users, but we also have a big community of lawyers who come from a very different perspective into Kleros, and so a big part of the community is actually not very active in the channels that people use in crypto. They don't. Not everyone has Telegram, in the legal world, and we have lots of followers and engagement on LinkedIn. That is basically where lawyers tend to interact more. So we're trying to understand all of these different channels, and so to improve that and to have a better onboarding experience into Kleros. So that then we have this week. So I already mentioned the use cases, or the V2 already mentioned. Next week we're going to do the demo. So communications, that. I mean, Jean, do you have something to update? Well, we have the constitution building process going on at Proof of Humanity. Maybe it's worth mentioning something there.
Yes, I was about to mention that we had the first call today in the Proof of Humanity Telegram group, discussed the first article of the Constitution. It's pretty minimal. We are trying to make like a just a basis of what will become the DAO, or what we envision the DAO to be. And we had a lot of feedback today. And I believe it's a process that many other DAOs or groups will go through. So if you're interested in this type of activities, I believe it's an opportunity to be a part of it, and have the experience of being a founding father, right?
Exactly. So we are doing this also, in collaboration with a group called Blockchain Go, which is led by Primavera de Filippi, and they are based in Paris. It's part of the Paris University, which is one of the best law schools in France. And well, she's assisting us, because nobody has done this constitution building process before in a structured way. So we are trying to learn how this works. I mean, we are like in some way, building the parachute as we jump in the air. But it's extremely important for us, because, as you know, one of the main use cases that we have been also developing for some time is Kleros as a constitution, as a Supreme Court for DAOs. If you have some governance attack that is being performed against some DAO, you could, because some malicious proposal is being passed, or there is a proposal that could be passed, and you can have Kleros as like last resort of instance to overturn those attacks. And so if we can understand better how to build these constitutions, then we can understand better what is the best way to implement Kleros in this Supreme Court type of use case. If you want to learn more about this, you can watch my presentation in Osaka in the DevCon, where I speak. The first time I speak about this is in Osaka, and I use the also Jimmy's presentation in ETHCC. I think it was 2020. So that explains how we think about the Supreme Court use case, and this is very relevant for a product of the governor, right? So this could be really important for lots of DAOs. I mean, it could become a standard in the DAO ecosystem if we nail this. It can become very, very big. It's already being used by 1inch, right? So and I think that's more or less it for this week. Linguo, still working on that. We have been also having some thoughts about how to better structure the mechanism for Linguo. I mean, not us, I mean, me personally, because there is some, but I will maybe mention this next week when I have more yeah, I put more thought into this because it seems to be suffering from the famous challenger dilemma that many curation type of apps tend to suffer. Maybe you want to explain how that works, William, the challenger's dilemma?
Yeah, so basically the idea of the challenger's dilemma is that you could never expect sort of like 100% curation of a list unless you have kind of external incentives coming in from somewhere. Because if you just rely on sort of challengers being compensated by rewards from submitters, then if you have, you fall into like an equilibrium where if there was 0% things that like were malicious that were getting through the list, then like the submitters like wouldn't bother to submit malicious things. They'd be or more sort of like nicely from but look thinking about the view of the submitters more positively. They would be like very vigilant in checking their proposals, which would mean that there's no opportunities for rewards for the challengers. So because as a challenger you spend like time and effort to review a submission that most of the time will just be right. Like each submission becomes sort of like less and less worth your time as the percentage of potentially flawed submissions goes down, and then at a certain point you're like not interested in engaging anymore. So then but on the other hand, there's like a cycle to this. So as challengers drop off because it wasn't worth their time anymore, then like maybe the percentage of flawed submissions like goes back up because it gets easier to like get something past the challengers, and then the sort of rewards also go back up. So you wind up in an equilibrium where you expect that some residual percentage of the submissions that are flawed are getting through, and it's just a matter of making sure that's like acceptably low for the rigor required by your list. So in particular, like there's a kind of like self-financing police department of having challengers that are like totally incentivized by kind of like fines for participants that are making mistakes. It's hard to have like perfect accuracy.
Yeah, so that's a lot of thought into that, and I'm currently thinking how maybe SBTs could help produce some incentives for people to still challenge. So yeah, I mean, this is just thoughts we're having in order to improve the mechanism design. As you know, William has been researching a lot about how SBTs can help Kleros, and this is one of the things that I keep having on my head all the time. This is with this discussion we had with Colin Rule, where I told this a million times, but it's maybe worth repeating for people who don't know it. No, Colin Rule is the guy who built the tutor solution system at eBay and PayPal, and so he always mentions this case where when they had developed the system at eBay, they had a budget to pay for jurors to resolve the cases. Of course, it was centralized, but it was still, other, users who adjudicated the disputes between other users. And they didn't have to spend any of that budget because people would do it for free, basically, because they were part of the eBay community and they thought it was kind of their duty in some way to help keep the community clean and do this job for free. And when they tried to bring this model to PayPal, it didn't work because they had to, the jurors, Kleros jurors that they recruited there, they wanted to be paid because nobody felt like being part of the PayPal community. PayPal is just a transaction, just a transactional tool that you use, and you don't belong to PayPal community as you belong to eBay community. So a lot of this, I would call extra economic incentives, are some of the things that influence user behavior, and this is something that we could potentially, but we are trying to understand how this can affect behavior and how this can improve the mechanism we have at Kleros. And that's why we have people like William working on these very difficult problems. And I think that's it for today. Next week, hopefully, we can show you Kleros 2.0 almost in a very advanced stage. And JB is going to also give you a comprehensive presentation of where we are and what is left to launch. As you know, some of the things do not depend on us. So that's why it's hard for us to put a date because some things are not under our control. And that's it, guys. I guess you want your POAPs, right?
Yeah, please DM me. I have the links and the ones for last week as well.
Awesome. Well, see you on Telegram, guys. Bye-bye.
Everybody.